Well, welcome to this episode of Sideline Sanity. One of the reasons I emphasize the word sanity is because there is so much insanity in the world today that it blows my mind. And I try to bring these stories forth in this podcast. And there was one I saw recently that made me think, what is happening to America? Here's one of the headlines. This volunteer chaplain was fired for his Christian beliefs. The Alliance Defending Freedom is defending Dr. Andrew Fox. His lawyer, Ryan Bangert, joins us along with Dr. Andrew Fox himself. Welcome to both of you. Dr. Fox, the way I see it is you were a volunteer chaplain for the Austin Fire Department, and they fired you because you believe that men and women should not compete in sports. Is that a fair nutshell?
I think that would be a summary of the ideology that is around today that is silencing particular voices who privately vocalize their beliefs, their values, and of course mine are widely and broadly held and historically held Christian beliefs. They're nothing new. And I argued in a private blog, not connected to my role in the fire department, that men transitioning to become women, competing against women in athletics, is yet another attack on women. And so apparently that caused offense and my dismissal.
To whom did it cause offense, Doctor?
The only response I can give you that I know is the LGBTQ community raised their complaints and offense to the fire department. I'm not quite sure how that chain of events happened, but that's what they did. And even to this day, having met with the representative of the LGBTQ community several times on my own steam, asking what is it that offends you, nothing was brought precisely to my attention as to what offended. And so I'm shocked, I'm angered, and I'm offended. At 8 years of public service, at my cost, I funded the program, not just volunteered, serving those who selflessly serve as first responders.
All right, Ryan, to you as the person defending this case, how is this even possibly legal in the United States of America that a man can be fired from a position for his beliefs, his religious beliefs, whether they were religious or not, but particularly for his religious beliefs?
Well, Michelle, the question really answers itself. It's not legal. Every American, including public employees, and in fact, Dr. Fox was a volunteer. I mean, he was technically an employee, but a volunteer employee of the fire department, have First Amendment rights. And especially in cases like this, where he is commenting on a matter of public concern, something that's being actively debated in society today. And I think anyone would debate that this question of whether men should be allowed to compete against women in sports is a topic of extreme public debate. And he simply shared his views on his own private blog, unconnected with the fire department. And based on some anonymous complaints, he was terminated for that. And in particular, because he wouldn't recant those beliefs. That's just a shocking example of government overreach and a shocking example of intolerance being shown by a public employer toward an employee's private beliefs.
Dr. Fox, let me applaud you for not apologizing and not recanting, because that is part of the problem today, that people are bullied into that position of feeling like, well, if I want to survive, if I want to keep my job, if I want to keep my place in society, I better do what the mob asks me to do. And you have not. How difficult has that been for you, and what have been the ramifications?
Well, I'm going to have to answer you in a short narrative to give weight to the ramifications. You could tell from my accent I wasn't born in the United States. I came in as an immigrant in 1999 on a religious workers visa as clergy. And that quickly went to a green card, and then I became a citizen of the United States along with all of my family. So that's the purpose as to why I came to this country and chose to. It was because of my clergy convictions, a sense of calling, sense of vocation. And I've held those beliefs and practiced those beliefs as a pastor and as a chaplain. And so that's been consistent for me. But over these 23 years, it seems to me that the United States has become a different country than the country I relocated to all those years ago. And that is a great concern for me. So the ramifications are the purpose that I moved to the United States was to carry out those pastoral, clergy, chaplain, vocational duties. And that impacts reputation greatly. And so that is a deep concern for me. And I'm very grateful for ADF in taking up my case and restoring that reputation.
Well, at the very least, what is the next legal step, Ryan? Because it just seems to me like this is almost an open and shut. But what is the process? Where are you in it? And what's next?
Well, Michele, we just filed the lawsuit in federal district court, and we've asked the court to enter an order that would restore Dr. Fox to his volunteer position. And also a declaration from the court that what they did to Dr. Fox is illegal. It violates the First Amendment. And I think this is incredibly important, especially in this present time, because what's happening to Dr. Fox, unfortunately, is not uncommon. This is not the first time that an employer, a public employer in particular, has decided to retaliate against an employee for holding what the employer deems to be the wrong, quote unquote, wrong beliefs. We've had this happen in universities. We have clients in other states, Dr. Josephson, Dr. Merriweather in Ohio, who have been terminated or retaliated against in their jobs simply because they held beliefs, personal beliefs, that conflicted with the prevailing orthodoxy at their institution.
I mean, that is what is so crazy to me. And Dr. Fox, it just seems so interesting that you've come from one way of life. You came here, you were drawn to this country, and I believe so ardently in free speech and the First Amendment and freedom of expression and of thought. Oh my gosh, to think that a place as liberal as Austin, Texas would try to tell you that, you know what, we don't really agree with you, so you got to go. That to me is shocking. Is that, do you think, because Austin has become so liberal that there is no diversity of thought, or am I seeing that wrong?
Well, I think I could maybe echo what Ryan has just said, that it's not specific to Austin, but happening all over the country. I'm part of the Federation of Fire Chaplains, and so through that, I get to hear what is happening in different parts of the country. And this certain ideologies that certain groups hold is becoming dominant, suppressing other views. And, you know, as an academic, you mentioned the books that are behind me. You know, I'm a book reader. I love books. C.S. Lewis is one of my great heroes. Even though I'm 54, I still read the Chronicles of Narnia. I love to read. And the idea that we cannot express our ideas, our thoughts, and put them in writing. It's very totalitarian. It's not the United States. It is not what America stands for. It is not constitutional. It is not honoring of First Amendment rights. I teach in various classes, and I encourage students to float their ideas, bring out your concepts. Let's discuss them with civil dialogue. My concern is, as Ryan said, in men and women that hold positions of servanthood, of serving. In my case, serving those who selflessly serve as firefighters is cutting off that resource that they need if they choose to call upon it. So it's a ricochet effect, like throwing a pebble in a lake. The ripples, they expand out and they don't stop. They affect everyone.
I want to get into that more deeply. Quick break. Back with Dr. Andrew Fox and his lawyer, Ryan Bangert from the Alliance Defending Freedom, to talk about just why chaplains are so important to first responders in just a moment. Wow, these days you walk through the grocery store, you look at prices, you shake your head. like Mary Tyler Moore in those opening credits when she looked at the steak and went, oh, remember that? And you look at gas prices and you look at inflation, you watch the stock markets, you're going crazy with dizziness watching all of this commotion. And you say, what do I do? What do I prioritize? Well, you've got short-term and long-term decisions you have to make. Short-term, how do you pay for the groceries? Long-term, I need to make some safe plays to protect my investments, to protect my 401k, and to make sure my retirement goes according to plan. I invest in legacy precious metals, silver and gold, and they're the only ones I trust, and I hope that you will too. You can check them out at legacypminvestments.com. You hear a lot about gold because gold is a hedge against inflation and it protects against a weakening dollar. That's why it's a great long-term play. So Legacy Precious Metals, they'll talk to you on the phone. You can check out their free investor's guide. Let me give you their phone number. Just call, ask some questions. You can speak to one of their IRA experts. The number is 866-528-1903, 866-528-1903, or download that free investor's guide I mentioned at legacypminvestments.com. Get your questions answered. Think about the future. Think about the stability that is gold. legacypminvestments.com. So, Dr. Fox, what drew you to becoming a chaplain for the Austin Fire Department in the first place?
Well, when I moved from the United Kingdom, I moved to the Pacific Northwest in Washington State, where I served as a pastor in a community, but also as a police chaplain. And for about 10 years. Then when I moved to Texas, the chief of police was very kind to recommend me to the chief of police in Austin, but they already had a program. And so the chief of police recommended me to the fire department, which is 1,300 plus uniform and civilian personnel who didn't have a program. And the fire chief at the time was delighted to receive me, give me the resources to develop the program and recruit other chaplains. So that was the string of events that occurred, which is by recommendation and reputation.
And what can you do for someone who is a firefighter or a first responder of any kind that you minister to when they have just come from a devastating scene? And I look, most of us will never know what first responders endure in their jobs. Most of us will never go on a police ride along. Most of us will never run into a burning home and see what these people see. So your role with them was important. And from your perspective, why?
Well, let me give you a story about that. If we could take our minds back a couple of years to the ice storm that hit Texas, and a battalion chief gave me a call one afternoon to come to a very tragic scene. It took me an hour to get there from Georgetown to downtown Austin. And when I arrived, very sadly, the firefighters were pulling bodies out the building. And it's a very tragic, moving scene. And these first responders, as you correctly say, they face things that are not, well, the rest of us don't face them. I turned up and covered the bodies and stood guard over the bodies, which brings comfort to a firefighter that all is well. And then when the scene is cleared and they're cleaning up their equipment, the battalion chief had me meet with each crew, and there were 3 crews at this particular scene, at the back of their engine, away from the public eye, just to so they can debrief, detox, so they can just share what they want to share, and then go back to the fire stations with them, grab a cup of coffee, and you provide pastoral care. And these men and women have to go back to their partners, their wives, their children, their cats, their dogs, whoever's at home. And it's important that they get off their shoulders the tragedies they've seen that day before they go home to their domestic life.
I think we take that so for granted. Have you heard from any of the people that you served in the department in terms of giving you support, or is that a taboo thing for someone in the Austin Fire Department to do, to reach out to you and say, we miss you, we need you, this is wrong?
Well, the art of becoming a chaplain in the fire department is to build the equity of trust. And that is not done immediately. That's done over a number of years. And so over 8 years, you can imagine the kind of relationships with all the 8 ranks of the fire department. And yes, they do reach out. They're still reaching out. And I still meet with firefighters in their homes, albeit as a private citizen, because those friendships have been built and enriched, and it takes time to nurture that. No chaplain can take for granted that they will be accepted. They have to earn that acceptance. And so what price do you want to put on that? You know, it is priceless. And I highly regard these first responders. I never want to be in a situation where I personally need a firefighter to rescue me. Nobody does, but it happens. And these men and women need a chaplain resource, not necessarily for religious reasons, but for pastoral care, just so they can officially, unofficially, just get off their chest things that concern them. You know, I'm not going to mention names, but there have been some firefighters that just come over to my house, to my office, grab a cup of coffee, and just spend 20 minutes in tears. And then wipe their tears, drink their coffee, crack a joke, and then off they go. That's pastoral care.
Wow. Again, I think most people don't have a clue what these first responders witness and go through emotionally, and that they're not just TV characters who let it roll off their backs and move on to the next one. There has got to be a lot of baggage that comes along with this. Ryan, I can't imagine that this can stand. What do you think the odds are? Where do you see Dr. Fox going back to the fire department in Austin? What do you foresee?
Michelle, I think you've just heard how critically important the role that Dr. Fox plays is. And the people who are being victimized most here, I mean, certainly Dr. Fox is a victim of this intolerance, but this intolerance is victimizing the men and women of the Austin Fire Department every bit as much. And by that, victimizing the entire community. And so I am confident in our lawsuit. I think our claims are strong. The question here, though, is a bigger one, which is are we going to continue down this path as a society where in order to hold public employment, you have to hold the fashionable views of the moment on hot button social and political topics? If that becomes a qualification for holding public employment, if that becomes the prerequisite for being able to serve, then we're all in a lot of trouble, because those fashionable views change and they shift. And it's simply not the way that our system of government was conceived. The First Amendment guarantees freedom of speech, free exercise of religion, for the purpose of allowing individuals to flourish, to allow free speech to flourish. And if we're demanding absolute fidelity to the ideology of the moment in order to hold public employment, well, then we've come a long way away from the country that Dr. Fox traveled to years ago as an immigrant to serve. And so I think this is a very important case. And I think this is a case that we do have the better of the legal argument.
I can't even imagine it going any other way when it comes to a court of law, how they could possibly say that volunteer or non-volunteer, how you can be terminated for holding a belief on a private blog is it's terrifying to me. And I'm so glad. I sound like I'm just kissing up here, but I'm really glad for organizations like the Alliance Defending Freedom, because we need this. It's a scary time right now. Dr. Fox, don't you find this a little alarming? And do you think this is the pendulum going a little too far one way? And I mean, I know I hope and pray, and I'm not a super religious person, but I pray. And I'm hoping that pendulum swings back and kind of settles somewhere in the world of sanity. Yes.
Well, I'm glad you pray regardless, whenever and wherever that is. That's always a good thing. And yes, sanity is the word for sure. There is I don't want to say an insanity, but there is a sensibility that seems to be lacking. If if you want to experience what sanity really is, it is to have civil dialogue, is to have opposing views, but with respect to each other. And isn't that what the United States was built on? Wasn't that the 13 colonies? Wasn't that why they rejected King George all the way back? Isn't that why we have the Constitution? And we can enter civil dialogue where we respect each other's views, but we don't punish them. And as Ryan has said, you know, I have been punished for holding widely, broadly Christian views, historically held views. And that is simply not right. It's nothing new in the world, but I'm grateful for ADF and what they're doing for me. And I am resolved to hold to my beliefs, and I will not apologize for them. I will not water them down or recant on them. And if I did, I would be betraying myself.
Amen to that. No pun intended. I applaud you. I applaud you both for taking up the cause that is so hugely important right now, but forever, but especially right now, it feels like diversity of thought is under attack. Freedom of thought and expression of speech is under attack. And in this country, this is the last place we should be worried about that. Ryan Bangert, thank you for representing him. Dr. Fox, I wish you nothing but the best. I kind of want to come visit that library and start going through those 4,000 books or however many you have, because that just looks like a phenomenal place to hang out.
You are welcome anytime.
Again, this has been Sideline Sanity. I'm Michele Tafoya. Be brave, do good, and maybe support Alliance Defending Freedom, because then you'll be supporting Dr. Fox. Get behind this. We're going to follow this case. I will, maybe my head will explode if this doesn't go the right way. I hope not, because I want to keep it together, but we're pulling for you. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Take care until next time.